Clark was pretty sure he was dreaming at this point. Only a couple of hours ago, he'd just been performing his duties as a humble cleanliness engineer, scrubbing the floors, cleaning the toilets, the whole shebang. And now, he'd just had a pillow fight with an off-color Ewok, only to then beat up two more for bullying the first one he'd met. Admittedly, it hadn't been the first time he'd drop-kicked a Care Bear, but at least this time he'd had a good enough excuse. After intercepting the distress signal, they were only supposed to check if anyone on board needed help, as well as figure out which government they'd have to inform, and perhaps taunt a diplomatically acceptable amount. But now Clark feared he may have complicated things a little bit by potentially mucking up a first contact scenario. One might argue that beating up 2 out of 3 aliens might have set a bad precedent. Then again, perhaps it wouldn't be too bad of an idea for humanity to not set the bar too high for themselves. At least the one he saved seemed amicable enough, if perhaps a little strange. Truthfully, Clark was secretly hoping everyone else was faring about as well as he was in regards to interacting with these creatures. That way he wouldn't have to feel too bad about choosing violence so recklessly. Hell, he might actually get his wish fulfilled. Stella had just contacted him regarding a certain kerfuffle going down at where they'd assumed the bridge was. He would have loved to stay with his new alien friend, but unfortunately Stella could get unpleasant when people tried to tactically evade her too often. And so, with a deep sigh and after rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, he got up, waved his new friend goodbye, and headed out to go do his job. Cleaning up other people's messes. It didn't take long for him to reach his colleagues, only to be met by the sight of 2 of them trying to kick down one of those futuristic-looking sideways sliding doors. While from the other side he heard what sounded like muffled, bear-like grunts and squeaks. "Okay, I'm here, what's going on? Wait, where's Marshall?" Clark asked, to which he practically immediately got his answer, as a loud thud could be heard coming from the surprisingly spacious vent above him, followed by a heavily accented, "Ouch! Fucking shite! Quick, lend us a hand here, will ya?" Stella loudly demanded. "It appears these, whatever they are trapped and are becoming increasingly anxious. We need to rescue them as soon as possible before something bad happens. Poor whittle fluffles. They sound like they might die from fear any second now. Don't worry, darlings, Mama's comin'." She roared before kicking the door as hard as she could. "As you've no doubt noticed, we've already sent our resident doctor and disappointed father figure into the vents to try and unlock it from the other side." Stella informed him with a surprisingly calm tone of voice and composed demeanor, which after her previous outburst made Clark's head spin. Should I be worried?" he asked while standing behind some debris and keeping reasonable distance between himself and his friends, who management had dubbed the uninsurables. "Nah, not really. They seem very sturdy and probably haven't seen that much wear and tear yet anyways." "I meant Marshall," Clark annoyedly added. "That's our Stella, all right. More concerned about the ship she's on than her own colleagues. Then again, usually the only thing standing between a human and the dark, cold vacuum of space is often a ship, so perhaps such a mindset wasn't entirely unreasonable." Clark thought to himself. Suddenly, various loud bangs could be heard from the direction of the vent, at which point the fuzzy little bear creatures seemed to quiet down and relax a bit. Guys, they're all staring at me. What do I do?" Marshall yelled through gritted teeth from behind the bridge's vent. He refused to look away in case the little bastards decided to bum-rush him. Not even a few seconds later, one of the aliens seemed to yell something. It seemed scared, an emotion that had undoubtedly claimed hold of all of the room's occupants, and whose control was now growing ever so rapidly. Like a room full of contractors whose pay had been withheld for a month too long, they all collectively began to tear down the large pile of shiny space machinery. They made quick work of the makeshift barricade, after which they streamed out of the room like a flood of fluff and fright. Probably one of the more preferable floods one might find out in the cold, vast nothingness of space. Various emotions washed over the humans: nervousness, cute aggression, confusion, and of course the ever-so-common urge to administer a very enthusiastic and memorable colonoscopy to whomever had decided to design the vents in such a way that they'd be just big enough for a human to fit into. The Enoweans frantically ran past them, and if it hadn't been for Jeremiah and Clark restraining her, Stella would have probably managed to grab one of the little buggers, after which she'd have undoubtedly mothered it to death. All the various dolls she'd vivisected, melted, and/or splatted as a kid could attest to that. Then again, if those Pixar movies were anything to go by, they most definitely couldn't. She huffed and softly cursed under her breath as the teddy bear-like aliens ran past them before disappearing into the distance. Stella's not a bad person or anything. She's just been blessed with the general tact and grace of a silverback gorilla holding a hand grenade. She tends to be a little too excitable and has a strange affinity for breaking the things she touches. Qualities not entirely sought after in an engineer, but at least she balances out her destructive nature with sheer talent and stubborn-headedness. Not even 2 seconds after the fuzzy teddy bear-like creature's cries and shouts had fizzled out in the distance, or yet another hairy and unintelligible creature had sought fit to voice his displeasure regarding his current predicament. This strange, inhuman creature was, of course, one of the crew's resident doctors, Marshall, a man commonly known for being as pleasant and patient as a kitchen timer taped to a hydraulic press. He claims to have found a loophole in the Hippocratic Oath, and we all suspect that his medical license may be more theoretical than the tangible variety most physicians claim ownership of. Once, one of the cooks asked him if he was actually qualified to treat people, to which he let out an amused snort before hurriedly walking away from the conversation, mumbling something to himself involving the word people. Here you go, sir," Jeremiah, the last of my friends, said to Marshall before helping him get back into his spacesuit. Jeremiah's a polite young man, or well, more accurately, he's an intern, and so sucking up is practically part of his not an actual job description. On one hand, he's a hard and kind worker. He always runs errands and gets us drinks whenever people tell him to. But on the other, he's got this annoying habit of never being around when you need him. So, should we maybe retreat to our vessel and document our findings? I'm pretty sure the captain would want us to report that we've found alien life as soon as possible. What's more, I'm pretty certain we've already broken countless protocols, so I reckon it would behoove us to keep our heads down and await further orders," Jeremiah suggested politely. "Yeah, sure, why not? After all, I'm pretty sure Stella can only carry back so many alien doohickeys. Ain't that right, you grubby thief?" Marshall yelled accusatorily, while looking at Stella, who was now frantically rummaging through a pile of alien machinery that not even a minute ago had been a makeshift barricade. Our suits didn't exactly have much in the way of pocket space, a problem Stella easily circumnavigated by simply opening up her suit and dumping the various alien devices directly into it. Apparently, she's been looting the ship ever since we'd boarded, and now, after practically shoving an entire barricade worth of shiny new tech into her suit, her kleptomania had become painfully apparent. At this point, her suit was bursting at the seams, making her look like a bulbous humanoid mass of excitement and gleeful mischief. After having just escaped a brush with death, the startled Inouyeans managed to regroup in what was essentially a large supply closet, this time making sure to cover the vents, and any other opening, however small, with stray pieces of cloth, figuring that Gaian's vision was probably based on movement. Once their super-secret blanket fort had been secured, they began to chat among themselves. "Good thing we've got the captain with us. If we hadn't followed his advice, most, if not all of us, would have been dead by now. Yeah, they couldn't even touch us, and not for a like of trying, mind you. Did you see how big they were? Even Maltic barely reached the short one's chin. Yeah, the one with the head, tail, and chest bumps looked ravenous. I was sure it was going to eat me. And what about the one in the vents? I was sure it was going to jump out and spit acid at us or something." "Pfft, that's nothing," Galeth remarked. "That heavy-chested one actually managed to cut me with one of her talons," he said while rolling up his sleeve to show off the minuscule cut he'd gotten from Stella's fingernail, gently brushing against his upper arm. "I think I saw a documentary about Gaia once, and I'm pretty sure that surviving an attack like that practically makes me an honorary part of their pack," he said arrogantly, while the other Inouyeans rolled their eyes and looked at him as if he'd just farted through his mouth. "Pfft, you mean the one they show every year during the Harvest Festival? All of that's just fear-mongering and imaginative guesses. For example, everyone knows that florigators aren't real, not even on Gaia, and don't even get me started on that whole sea of sodium chloride bullshit. All pure believer ought to only watch proper church-approved media. Won't rot your brain as much." "Yeah, right," retorted Galeth. "Their theories are just as baseless and outlandish. like how Gaians can apparently fire up to half a liter of gastric acid from their mouth when threatened. And well, did you see anyone melt a minute ago? Well, no, but, Galeth, are you okay? You look pale and you've been panting for a while now. Galeth, argumentative rival, asked concernedly. Oh, yeah, don't worry. I just think I gotta lay down for a little bit. Don't worry. It'll take more than a Gaian attack to keep me down. Galeth tried to ease his contemporary's fears before loudly coughing. He tried to gently lower himself onto the ground, but found that most of his strength had already left him, and so with a hollow thud, fell to the ground helplessly. While staring upwards, Galeth could see all his fellow Enoweans crowd around him. Their expressions had become deformed with concern and fear. It must have been those Gaians. They sucked out his soul. No, it's that scratch. They must have poisoned him. His insides are probably turning to soup as we speak. Don't be dim! The captain yelled at the murmuring crowd while pushing past a couple engineers to get to Galeth. He grabbed his arm and knowingly nodded. Yep, it's just as I'd feared. Do you know what this is, Captain? Aye, lad, only seen it a couple times before, though I'd recognize it anywhere. My mother-in-law was a priestess who specialized in exorcisms, after all. You see, young Galeth here, the captain paused for dramatic effect, has been cursed by the Gaian's vile soul magic. The crowd gasped. So, is he gonna die? Aye, or worse. You see, if Galeth manages to cling on to life for more than 12 hours after the initial scratch, he will start to feel his body twitch and shake as it grows increasingly hotter. His limbs will grow rapidly to disproportionate sizes. It will feel as if bugs are wriggling beneath his skin. He will sprout fangs, horns, and claws. And then, once again, the foolish captain paused for dramatic effect. He will turn into one of them. The crowd gasped. He'll eat us! He'll turn us into Gaians, too. Maybe we should, Galeth could barely hear anything as his body continued to be at the mercy of this strange Gaian influence. It was like torture. Pain dulled his senses. He felt oh so tired. But he knew that if he fell asleep now, he might not wake up again. Don't worry, everyone, the captain bellowed. We need not resort to such extreme methods just yet. There is one way to rid young Galeth of this curse. We need to kill the creature that did this to him.